On the day my fiancé pretended to have amnesia, he dragged me to the Civil Affairs Bureau and turned the marriage certificate we got just the day before into a divorce certificate. 2 days later, the wedding I had carefully prepared was held as scheduled. The groom was still him, but the bride had become his on-off ex-girlfriend. When we met again, his eyes were red as he grabbed my hand. "Olivia, where have you been? Why haven't you come to see me for so many days?" I pretended to be blank-faced, looking at him like a stranger. "Sir, who are you? Do we know each other?" "Olivia. Come to the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock to get a divorce." William commanded and hung up the phone without waiting for my answer. William was my fiancé. He had lost his memory. The first thing he did after losing his memory was to call me over to get a divorce. We got our marriage certificate yesterday morning, and now, early this morning, it was going to turn into a divorce certificate. When I got to the Civil Affairs Bureau, I found that William wasn't alone. The woman who was affectionately holding his arm beside him was very familiar to me. I had seen her in William's private WeChat moments. Her name was Emma, and she was his ex-girlfriend who had been on and off with him for 5 years. It seemed that she didn't disappear from William's moments, which were only visible to himself, until I showed up. Now that William had lost his memory and forgotten only me. So she was back by William's side. When she saw me, the smile on Emma's face seemed to turn timid. She stammered, "Miss Olivia, don't get me wrong. William and I are just..." As she spoke, she didn't let go of his hand. Instead, she held it even tighter. At an angle where William couldn't see, she raised her eyebrows at me and smiled. William held her hand tightly, gently kissed her hair affectionately, and said in a tough tone, "I asked Emma to come with me. It's not a misunderstanding. She's my girlfriend originally." My heart suddenly ached. Meeting Emma's triumphant gaze, I struggled to tug at the corners of my lips and nodded. "Yeah, got it." There weren't many people getting divorced. When going through the formalities, the staff member gave me a surprised look. I was also astonished. She was the one who had handled our marriage registration yesterday. At that time, she had congratulated us with a happy wedding, wished you a harmonious union lasting 100 years. We had thanked her with smiles. Today we were here again, but to get a divorce. The person holding William's arm was no longer me but Emma. I stood in front of them, feeling embarrassingly redundant. The staff member looked at the three of us suspiciously. After a while, she said, "Sorry, this doesn't meet the regulations." William frowned because he couldn't wait. He just made one phone call. Then we got the divorce certificate. It was quite ridiculous. It was the same red booklet, but there was no longer a sweet group photo on it. I held the booklet in my hand, trying to ignore the burning pain in my chest. Me looked innocent and seemed to ask me casually, "Since you're already divorced, you're not going to keep living in William's house, are you?" After asking, as if she just realized something, she quickly added, "Sorry, I know Miss Olivia hasn't bought a house. After all, you were husband and wife once. If you want to stay for a few days, William won't object." William interrupted her, looking at me without a trace of emotion in his voice. "Since we're divorced, you should move out with your clothes right now." His tone was cold and matter-of-fact, as if it wasn't him who was pretending to have amnesia. My throat tightened immediately. The bright red divorce certificate in my hand caught my eye. Wasn't this what he pretended to have amnesia for? Why bother? I was never the type to cling to someone. If he wanted a divorce, how could I hold on to a man who didn't love me? It was just ridiculous that our 5-year relationship couldn't even get a straightforward explanation. This marriage ended in such an absurd way. I took a deep breath and tried to force a stiff smile. "Fine, as you wish." The car William drove was the wedding car we had chosen together. When we bought it, William said to me, "On our wedding day, I'll use this car to take my Olivia home." The car was picked up yesterday afternoon, and I hadn't even ridden in it yet. Now, the person sitting in the passenger seat of this car was Emma. It had become a witness to their love. William leaned over and affectionately buckled the seatbelt for Emma. The two of them were very close, their breaths intertwined. When William sat up, Emma sweetly kissed him on the cheek. Subconsciously, William looked up at me. Emma followed William's gaze and saw me. She said unhappily, "Sorry, this is the car William gave me. It's exclusive to me. I don't want any other woman to get in." William looked at her with full of affection and said, "Of course, what your husband gives you. How can others ride in it?" After that, William drove away with Emma. The pungent exhaust fumes sprayed all over my face. My nose twitched, and finally, a tear couldn't hold on any longer and rolled down, falling into the dust on the ground and disappearing. When I rushed there by taxi in a hurry, the gate of the villa was tightly closed. My luggage was just thrown outside on the ground, mixed with the rain from last night. All muddy and dirty. I knocked on the door for a long time and then Amelia, who worked in the villa, opened the door. She looked a bit embarrassed. "All these were thrown out as Miss Emma ordered." Ma's voice came over. "Huh? Are these your things?" "Sorry, I thought they were some garbage that no one wanted, so I had them all thrown out. I didn't mean it. Miss Olivia won't be angry. Right?" Mama came out in her pajamas, deliberately showing the hickeys on her neck. I pretended not to see them and just slightly tugged at the corners of my lips. "Miss Emma's upbringing is really worrying." A reprimand came from inside the house. "Olivia, don't push your luck. Didn't Emma apologize to you? What else do you want?" Hearing this, I looked over. William walked to Emma's side and looked at me with a cold face. His eyes swept over the scattered items on the ground, and he sneered. "These pieces of junk. You still treat them like treasures." My throat choked, and my heart suddenly tightened so much that I couldn't say anything. He then urged impatiently, "Hurry up and pack your things and take them away. Otherwise, I'll call the cleaners to take them away." I tried hard to hold back the moisture in my eyes and nodded. "Okay. Also, I don't want to see you here again. Mo will misunderstand. I can't make my wife angry." As he spoke, he put his arm around Emma. And the two of them were affectionate as if no one else was around. My fingers almost dug into my palms. Swallowing the bitterness in my throat, I silently packed my things. Clearly, I hadn't lived here for long, but there were so many things. They filled the suitcases to the brim. In fact, this villa was the wedding house that William and I prepared. The meticulous decoration design, the comfortable and elegant furniture and daily necessities. One by one, they were all designed and arranged by me. It was filled with my full of expectations, because this was the home where William and I would spend the rest of our lives together. But now, the house was still the same. But the person living in it was no longer me. Things remained the same, but people had changed. I walked out carrying two suitcases. Mona took a deep breath. "Without this garbage, the air is much fresher." Hearing this, William ordered, "Amelia, tell someone to clean the whole house thoroughly. If there are any more of her things, throw them all into the trash can." I stopped in my tracks. The wind blew across my face, and I didn't know when the tears in my eyes had completely dried up. I turned my head and curled my lips at Emma, saying, "The trash I don't want is yours. I've rented a place near the studio. I used to think the rent there was too high and was reluctant to rent it. I saved all my money, only wanting to focus on my career. Because when I was with William, I was always afraid that there was too big a gap between us. After all, I'm just an ordinary person, and there is indeed a huge disparity between me and the young master of the William family. Now I've fallen from the clouds and returned to my humble life. Yet, I feel incredibly relaxed. I lay in bed, unconscious for 24 hours. Until I received a call from my partner, Olivia, there's an important wedding tomorrow. I'm a wedding planner and co-founded a wedding planning company with a friend. The wedding that was originally scheduled for tomorrow, the one between me and William, was also something I spent 3 months designing and preparing for. Now, this wedding became a mirage even before it started. When I heard those familiar words on the phone, my heart skipped a beat. I asked in a trembling voice, Who are the bride and groom? The names William and Emma drilled into my ears. My head started buzzing. I can't possibly preside over their wedding. My partner's cautious voice came through. Olivia, they specifically asked for you. You know that if you don't go, our studio. With just one word from William, I'll be left with no way out in this city. I hung up the phone and slumped onto the bed. William was coming after me. He specifically named me to plan his wedding. They took the initiative to provoke, and I had nowhere to hide. I quickly got myself together and rushed to the wedding venue. What greeted my eyes was the breathtaking lavender sea in the manor. As the gentle breeze blew, the lavender branches swayed with the wind, like purple waves. Initially, the wedding venue was set here because I loved lavender the most. I hoped that on the most important day of my life, I could hold hands with the one I loved most and walk into the rest of our lives in a sea of lavender. But now, seeing the sea of flowers again, my heart was filled with nothing but bitterness. I suppressed the bitterness and discussed the wedding arrangements with Emma in a businesslike manner. She had a lot of complaints, kept pointing and making me make changes. William sat patiently beside her. His hand was around Emma's waist, and there was not a trace of impatience on his face. Just a few days ago, he held me in his arms like this, listening to me plan our wedding without getting tired. After making me busy for half a day, Emma finally said, "Forget it, let's just go with the original plan. After all, Miss Olivia is the most familiar with the original plan. I trust Miss Olivia to handle it." I looked at the dense notes on the tablet and tightly clenched my fingers. The original plan she mentioned was actually the one I made for my own wedding. William knew that too. May looked at my speechless expression and happily curled the corners of her mouth. She said casually, "The wedding will be held tomorrow morning. Although it's a bit rushed, I believe Miss Olivia will be able to make it perfect, right?" I was stunned for a moment. My wedding with William was also originally scheduled for tomorrow morning. I looked up and met Emma's triumphant gaze. The wedding I painstakingly planned for a month had now become Emma's. It was both annoying and disgusting. After a long silence, I forced out a yes from my throat. May leaned close to William, her smile hiding a dagger. "William, Miss Olivia has really helped us a great deal. We should give her a big red envelope when we get married." William said inferently, "This is what she should do. Otherwise, why would I pay her?" Hearing this, Mo smiled even more triumphantly. I pursed my lips tightly and closed my eyes for a moment. Yes, Miss Emma is right. You two are my clients, and this is what I should do. I stayed up all night. The wedding was held as scheduled at 10 a.m. this morning. Just as I was about to turn and leave, I felt a sudden heat below. My period had come early. The dizziness from blood loss and staying up all night made me almost unable to stand. But then someone suddenly held me up. I opened my eyes and saw it was William. Subconsciously, I pushed him away. A look of surprise flashed across his face, and then it turned cold. "What are you standing here for? If you don't go and help, do you want to be the bride?" I twitched the corners of my mouth. Money is hard to earn, and life is tough. I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I silently turned to leave but was stopped. No walked over in a gorgeous and beautiful purple wedding dress, accentuating her slender waist, looking graceful. My eyes inevitably fell on her wedding dress. This wedding dress was originally chosen by William for me. Now, it was on Emma. My fingers unconsciously dug into my palm, and the pain tugged at the taut string in my mind. Ma proudly spun around in front of me, with a fake smile on her face. She said, "Miss Olivia, do you think this wedding dress looks good? Does it match the scene today?" I couldn't speak and just nodded randomly. The smile on her face grew wider, and she looked at me with a sly look. "I wonder if Miss Olivia would like to be our wedding host." The string in my mind suddenly snapped. I looked up, my eyes filled with anger. William seemed very satisfied with my reaction and ordered me, "Did you hear that? Ma asking you to host the wedding is an honor for you." A sarcastic smile curled up on my lips. "What if I say no?" William looked at me coldly. Then I can only assume that Miss Olivia doesn't have the ability. I think there's no need for such a company to exist, right? I bit the tip of my tongue, and the taste of blood filled my mouth. I forced down the sobs in my throat. It was so embarrassing. Couldn't we just part amicably? I've never been the type to cling on. Even without today's humiliation and anger, I would still stay away from them. Why do they have to humiliate me like this? I nodded numbly. I walked past them with unsteady steps. When I reached Emma's side, I paused slightly. I whispered, "Miss Emma, second-hand goods don't suit you. The chest is too loose. And the waist is too tight." I didn't look at Emma's instantly gloomy face and walked away in a hurry. The wedding officially started. The sunlight fell into the lavender sea, creating a dreamlike scene. Ma, in her beautiful purple wedding dress, slowly walked into the lavender sea. Amidst thunderous applause, she placed her hand in William's palm. I thought I was already numb, but my eyes were uncontrollably moist. I had imagined this wedding countless times in my mind. In these 3 months I had gradually made it a reality. But the bride wasn't me. My soul seemed to be split into two. One was stinging in a sea of flowers, and the other was numbly reciting the lines that I had known by heart so many times. I couldn't even remember how the wedding ended. I just walked back to the rental house like a wandering soul, wearing high-heeled shoes that had rubbed my heels raw. As soon as I lay down, I fell into a drowsy sleep. In my dream, everything was fragmented. Like a fleeting glimpse, the 5 years we had spent together flashed before my eyes. And these 5 years were shattered and taken away one from my dream, leaving no ripples. I slept for 3 days. When I woke up, I was starving. When ordering takeout, I saw the withered lavender on the windowsill. The flower language of lavender is waiting for you to love me. I thought I no longer needed that. Strangely, all the things that happened between me and William in the past seemed to have completely become the past along with these 3 days and nights of darkness. Even if I thought about them, it was like flowers in a mirror or the moon in the water, separated by a hazy dream, as if from another world. I touched my chest, and my heart was beating strongly. It didn't hurt anymore. I blocked William. Since he wanted to pretend to have amnesia, I hoped he could do it thoroughly. It would be best if we were strangers for the rest of our lives. Perhaps because disappointment in love is often accompanied by success in the workplace, our business expanded across the country. I started traveling on business frequently. By the time I came back from my last business trip, it was already a month later. When I walked out of the company, a Maybach was parked by the roadside. A man was leaning against the car door, smoking. There were already a lot of cigarette butts beside him. He seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. When he saw me coming out, he rushed forward. Through the smoke I could clearly see his features. It was William. I instinctively frowned. Before I could dodge, he had already grabbed my wrist. He looked at me with red eyes, as if I had done something wrong. "Olivia, where have you been? Why didn't you come to find me?" And my sarcastic laugh welled up in my heart. When I looked up, my face had turned into one of blankness and vigilance. I looked at him like a stranger. "Sir, who are you? Do we know each other?" William froze in an instant, his face full of shock. He increased the strength in his hand uneasily. "Olivia, what are you talking about? How can you pretend not to know me?" Pain came from my wrist. I furrowed my brows, my eyes slightly cold. "Sir, please let go. This is harassment. If you don't let go, I'll call the police." William didn't let go. His eyes fell on my face. Seeing the unfamiliarity in my eyes, his face was filled with panic and unease. He said in a trembling voice, "Olivia, I'm William, I'm your husband." I didn't believe him. In my struggle, I bit him hard. He winced in pain but still didn't let go. I shouted at the top of my voice, "Help!" He tried to cover my mouth, but it was too late. Passers-by gathered around. He was in a panic, trying to explain. "I'm her husband. She's just having a tantrum with me." I pulled his hand away and shouted in a flustered manner. He's lying. I don't know him. Seeing this, the onlookers looked at William suspiciously and held him down. Some kind-hearted people called the police. The police car took both of us to the police station. William was my husband. Once. Now he could only be considered an ex-husband. The dates on the marriage certificate and the divorce certificate were only 1 day apart. Our married life didn't even last 24 hours. After finding out everything, the police looked at William with a complicated expression. After giving him a severe reprimand, William was released. At the entrance of the police station, William's eyes were fixed firmly on me. He asked hoarsely, "Olivia, don't you know me anymore?" I stepped back in disgust and said inferently, "I had a serious illness a month ago and lost a lot of my memories. Should I remember you? Since I've forgotten, it must not be important." Hearing this, William's expression was a bit hurt. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. I cut him off. "I heard you're my ex-husband. Since you can become my ex-husband, I don't think there's any need for us to have any contact." William's expression immediately turned panicked. "Olivia, listen to me explain." Ma's voice interrupted William. Hearing this, I looked over. Mama was hurrying over, her eyes stabbing at me full of hostility. She put her arm around William's arm possessively and asked, "Why are you here?" I sneered. "Are you William's wife? You should ask your husband about this, not question me, an innocent person." Ma looked suspicious but forced herself to sound confident. "William can't be wrong." But William unexpectedly shook off Emma's hand. His eyes never landed on Emma from beginning to end. He took a step forward, but seemed to be stopped by my defensive gaze. He explained in a hoarse voice, "Olivia, she's not my wife. I haven't gotten a marriage certificate with her. You're the only one who's my wife." Hearing this, Emma's face turned completely dark. She reached out uneasily to grab William's hand, her tone urgent. "William, let's go home, okay?" William reflexively pushed her away. Emma fell to the ground with a cry of pain. She was crying pitifully. "William, it hurts." But this still didn't draw William's attention. William's eyes were still fixed firmly on me. His voice even carried a hint of pleading. "Olivia, listen to me explain. I had amnesia before, so I was tricked into divorcing you, but now I remember everything." I interrupted him impatiently, "I don't care. Please don't pester me." I turned around and left impatiently. William wanted to follow. I threatened him inferently. "This is the police station. Do you want to go in again?" His steps stopped. I left without looking back. Behind me were the fierce arguing sounds of Emma and William. It had nothing to do with me. But William started to pester me relentlessly. He somehow found out the address of my rental house and pitifully waited outside my door every day. As soon as I opened the door and saw his face, I frowned in disgust. A look of hurt flashed in his eyes. But he persevered in offering me the breakfast in his hand. It was the custard buns and preserved egg and lean meat congee that I usually liked. Looking at the packaging, it was from my favorite store, which was far from my rental house. But when it was offered to me, the breakfast was still steaming hot. I impatiently pushed his hand away. The breakfast in his hand fell. The bun rolled around and became dirty. The congee spilled all over the ground and splashed my trouser legs. I was immediately furious. "In the early morning, can you stop causing me trouble? You're so annoying." He looked at me with a hurt expression. A little bit of the congee spilled on his hand, making it red from the heat. But he said humbly, "Olivia, I'm sorry." I didn't bother to listen to his explanation and slammed the door shut. I changed into a new set of clothes and ignored William, who was waiting outside the door. He followed me like a dog, but was sprayed in the face by the exhaust of my car. At noon, he relentlessly sent flowers and lunch. I refused them all. The delivery guy made several calls to him in a state of helplessness. Finally, he could only helplessly place the flowers and lunch at the entrance of the company. The weather was hot, and the lunch that had been left there for the whole afternoon gave off a disgusting sour smell. I pinched my nose and threw the spoiled lunch and the flowers that had been soaked in the sour smell for the whole afternoon into the trash can. When I looked up, I met his hurt gaze. I tightly furrowed my brows, and words of rebuke blurted out, "Why do you always cause trouble for others?" William pursed his lips tightly, and a layer of gloom seemed to cover his eyes. I rubbed my temples with a headache and said dissatisfied lie, "William, what's the point of doing all these? I don't remember you. And I don't want to remember you. Can you stop disturbing my life?" William's face immediately turned pale. He stood there silently, with an indescribable sadness in his eyes. After a long while, he choked and pleaded, "Olivia, can you give me a chance? Give me a chance to wake up your memories. I've also had amnesia, and I know how to wake up your memories." I interrupted him faintly. "You had amnesia, and I also had amnesia. Coincidentally, we don't owe each other anything. There's no need to recover our memories." William's throat suddenly tightened. A numb pain appeared on his face. "Olivia, are you still blaming me? I was tricked by Emma into divorcing you. Can you forgive me?" I impatiently emphasized, "This doesn't matter." "I don't care." His voice stopped abruptly. His breathing became rapid and irregular, as if the pain in his heart was unbearable for him. After a long silence, he said hoarsely, "Olivia, you weren't like this before. I'm a wedding planner. I've encountered all kinds of troubles, big and small. So I always keep my emotions stable in front of William. The only thing that made me lose my composure was when William claimed that he had amnesia and asked me to divorce him. I knew he was faking it. This was a trick he played to tease me. But I still lost control." I clearly saw a flash of complacency in William's eyes. He was proud of my loss of control for him. It seemed that only when I was humble and despicable enough could it prove my love for him. How ridiculous. Was he still a primary school student? Testing a girl's love for him by humiliating her? This wasn't love. This was blatant teasing. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. I turned William away again and again. But he still appeared in front of me tirelessly and frequently. Every time I trampled on his feelings, an indescribable sadness would appear on his face. But the next day he would still humble himself to please me. One late night, I was watching food videos and got craving, and casually posted a WeChat moments. The caption was, "Really want to eat." Half an hour later, my door was knocked. William was standing at my door, his forehead covered with fine sweat. In his hand was the food I had posted in the moments. Listening to his out-of-breath gasps, I could imagine that he must have run to several places in the middle of the night before finally finding the food I wanted to eat. But he didn't say a word about his hardship. He just held out the food in his hand and said humbly, "Olivia, didn't you say you wanted to eat? I bought it for you." There was no joy on my face as he expected. Instead, there was a deeper sense of disgust. I pushed his hand away and cursed, "Did you do this on purpose? You clearly know I'm on a diet, and you deliberately make me eat high-calorie food at night. Why do you always make things worse?" I angrily slammed the door shut. At the end, they still felt angry and opened the door again. William's disappointed face instantly brightened, and his eyes sparkled. He hoped, "Olivia, are you willing to accept my feelings?" I sneered, "Get lost. Don't peek at my WeChat moments anymore." I scolded him again mercilessly. Closing the door, I found his secondary account, and blocked him. Unable to contact me, he had to use the old method and keep watch near my rental house and company every day. A few times, I heard him answering the phone outside my door. Momo was arguing with him loudly on the phone. The assistant of his company also frequently sent him messages urging him to go back. He's the manager of the company. His frequent absences during this period have caused many of the company's businesses to stagnate, seriously damaging the company's interests. The company's shareholders also have a lot of complaints about him. He's in a dilemma. I thought he would give up. But he didn't. When I opened the door, I still saw his figure. His face looked haggard, and there were some unshaven stubble less on his chin. Looking closely, his eyes were still slightly red. I called the police. But after being locked up for 2 or 3 days, he still didn't change his ways after coming out. I sneered. A president of a listed company, insisting on getting the label of a stalker. How can you be so despicable? William gritted his teeth, and his jawline was tightly tensed. He silently expressed his persistence. But I was already tired of this boring game. I crossed my arms over my chest and looked down at him. So, what do you need to do to give up? Hearing this, William suddenly stood up straight, his eyes lighting up. He said overjoyed, "Olivia, give me a chance. Let me try to help you recover your memories, okay? As long as you remember everything, you will definitely come back to me." I stared at him meaningfully for a long time. "Are you so certain that as long as I remember everything, I'll change my mind? But whether I have amnesia or not, it's a fact that you divorced me, and it's also a fact that you had a wedding with Emma. I don't think I'll forgive you even if I recover my memories." Facing my aggressiveness, William subconsciously took a half step back. His eyes dodged, and he no longer looked me in the eye. But he said firmly, as if trying to cover up his guilt, "Olivia, as long as you remember everything, you will definitely come back to me." I didn't bother to expose his self-deception and said inferently, "I'll give you a week. If you can't make me change my mind, don't pester me anymore." William pursed his lips and negotiated. "Can it be a month?" I furrowed my brows and said irritably, "Don't bargain with me here. I don't want to waste time on you. You're running out of time, aren't you? If you keep pestering me, you'll be the one with more to worry about." William gritted his teeth and remained silent. I raised my hand to close the door. He reached out to stop me and replied, "Okay." After that he looked at me with a deep gaze. In his eyes, longing and hope intertwined. He grabbed my hand and took me to all the places in this city where we had left our footprints. Our first encounter was his love at first sight for me. Just because of a fleeting glance, he deliberately got close to me. Unlike those playboy rich kids on the surface, when he pursued someone he didn't rely on money and power. He would carefully find out my preferences and look for common topics with me. I loved drinking milk tea. Eating desserts, like lavender, my favorite game, my favorite color. My aesthetic and values. He found out all these clearly. When chatting with him, I felt that we had a lot in common and had a great conversation. So I let down my guard and gradually enjoyed it. He was like a huge net enveloping me overwhelmingly. By the time I fell in love with him, there was no escape for me. During the 3 years of our relationship, I wasn't unaware that he wasn't as wonderful as when we first met. But I thought this was just a normal state of love. When you fall in love with someone, you keep lowering your bottom line and tolerantly accept your lover. However, William's true nature was even worse than I had imagined. I listened to his babbling in my ear, talking about one of the stories between him and me in the past. I just looked at him with an expressionless face. He looked away in embarrassment, not daring to meet the indifference in my eyes. As I listened further, I couldn't help but frown. The so-called beauty in his words had long been replaced by the humiliation and degradation he had inflicted on me and my heart. I couldn't be moved in the slightest. Facing my indifference, his eyes gradually turned red. He opened the photo album on his phone and talked about the origin of each photo. As he flipped through the photos, suddenly, there were photos of him and Emma. He panicked and put away his phone, stuttering, "Olivia, I just asked curiously. I heard that Emma is your ex-girlfriend. You two had an on and off relationship for 3 years. Why aren't you with her?" William suddenly fell silent. After a long while, he said in a deep voice, "She's just my past. Olivia, the person I love now is you." I retorted, "But when you lost your memory, the only person you forgot was me, and the person you chose to marry was her. This shows that I'm not irreplaceable. And it also shows that she's very important to you. So, why do you still hold on to me? Isn't it good to be with her?" William's lips turned pale for a moment. And he couldn't say anything. I said casually, since you could forget, it means that what was forgotten wasn't important. The same goes for you and me. I looked straight into his eyes and added lightly, moreover, amnesia has never been an excuse to humiliate others. His breath hitched, and panic instantly spread from the bottom of his eyes to his entire eyeballs. His lips moved, but his throat seemed to go hoarse. After a long while, he said in a low voice, Olivia, there are still 3 days left. I will definitely make you remember our past. I sneered and didn't say a word. On the 4th day he brought the blue cat that had been sent to the pet store for foster care. The blue cat rushed to my feet and affectionately rubbed against my hand, unwilling to leave. As I stroked its dull and withered fur, my body suddenly froze. This blue cat was a birthday gift he gave me on my 26th birthday. In a large bouquet of lavender, there was a 3-month-old kitten hidden. The kitten's cute appearance, peeking out from the flowers, made people's hearts melt. He held the flowers and the cat, with a gentle smile on his face, saying, Olivia, would you like to give this little kitten a home? I stroked the kitten's furry little head, and my voice unconsciously softened. Little kitten, would you like to come to Auntie's home? The little kitten let out a weak meow. Louder than the meow was William's response, yes, I'd like to. He squeezed next to me, with a smile in his voice. The kitten still lacks a father. You don't want it to grow up without a father's company at such a young age, do you? I understood the meaning behind his words, and my face instantly turned red. I mumbled, wishful thinking. But under his persistent pestering, I finally agreed to live with him. Now, as William talked about this memory, his eyes were filled with tender affection. I stroked the blue cat curled up on my knees, looking dazed, my heart as calm as still water. I remembered the day I was kicked out by William. All I could take away were things considered trash in their eyes. Even this blue cat, which was a birthday gift from him to me. Nominally mine. But I couldn't take it with me. My sarcastic smile curled up on my lips. I put on a stern face and started to scold. How could you put the cat in the lavender? Don't you know that lavender is toxic to cats? What if the cat gets poison after eating it? Furthermore, who would give a living being as a birthday gift? This is a life, and the person raising it needs to take responsibility for this life for a lifetime. Or is a cat nothing in your eyes? You can raise it when you want and abandon it when you want. My succession of accusations left William stunned. He looked at me in a fluster, opened his mouth, and fell silent again. I held the blue cat in my arms, feeling pity. The cat was given by William, but I was the one who raised it. I had never raised a pet before. After looking up information, I found out that cats couldn't be in contact with lavender. Since then, I had kept the lavender and the cat apart. But he didn't notice. So much so that now, he could still confidently mention this matter in front of me. Back then, I thought William was just following the trend on the internet by giving a cat, so I didn't take it too seriously. But the bullet he shot back then had now hit him right between the eyes. I lifted my eyelids and questioned. Since it's my cat, why did you hide it? William was speechless. I calmly asked further, I lost my memory. Then tell me, was it my fault? Did I not want to take care of it anymore? William clenched his fists. Regret and struggle seemed to make it hard for him to breathe. He looked at me helplessly. Olivia. It's my fault. It's all because I lost my memory and couldn't handle these things well, making you sad. I will never make the same mistake again. I casually concluded, amnesia isn't a reason for you not to take good care of a cat. I turned my eyes away, not looking at his dejected expression. I informed him. Since it's my cat, I'm taking it with me. At these words, William's face instantly brightened. Olivia. I knew you wouldn't abandon the cat. I rudely interrupted him. Draw up a contract. You're not allowed to snatch the cat from me again. The arc of William's mouth froze. He murmured in distress, Olivia, why are you being so distant from me? I sneered, let me remind you, Mr. William. From my perspective, you're worse than a stranger to me. William stood there stunned. And his eyes instantly dimmed. William's face looked more and more unpleasant day by day. On the evening of the last day the sky was filled with a magnificent sunset, as beautiful as a painting. We walked to the lavender field in the manor. The furnishings in sight were so familiar. Everything here was exactly the same as the wedding a month ago. Only the crowds of guests and the bride and groom holding hands were missing. We stood in the lavender field. The gentle breeze blew my long black hair, and the lavender swayed along. William stared at me obsessively. In the brilliant afterglow, he knelt down on one knee in front of me. In his outstretched palm was a familiar wedding ring. 2 months ago that wedding ring had been on my finger. But on the day he married Emma. Also in this lavender field, he put this wedding ring on Emma's middle finger. His figure overlapped with that of the groom at that wedding. He said softly, "Olivia, we once planned that our wedding would be grandly held in this lavender field. I would hold your hand and, in front of everyone, we would make promises to each other and stay together until we grow old." He stared fixedly at me, his eyes seemingly filled with unwavering affection. "Olivia, will you marry me?" I was so angry that I laughed, then slapped him across the face. I cursed, "Do you think I'm Emma? Taking whatever second-hand stuff comes along?" He was a bit slow to react after being slapped. His right cheek swelled up high. I huffed and turned to leave. I didn't want to stay in this infuriating place for even a second longer. He was stunned for a while, then quickly chased after me. I stopped in my tracks and said coldly, "That's enough. It's the last day. Don't pester me anymore from now on." He grabbed my wrist in a panic. His eyes were blood red. And he looked pitiful. "Olivia, can you go to one more place with me for the last time?" I impatiently tugged at my wrist. He didn't let go, and his eyes were full of humility. "Just this last time." I had no choice but to say, "Fine." When the car stopped in front of us was a familiar villa. He hesitated and said, "Olivia, do you remember? This is our home." Home? 3 months ago, I was embarrassingly kicked out from here. My voice was firm. "This is not my home." William's expression turned lonely for a moment. He instinctively wanted to hold my hand, but I deliberately avoided it. I said coldly, "Mr. William, mind your boundaries." He pursed his lips and remained silent. In the standoff, the door was pushed open from inside the villa. Miss' hair was messy, and she looked haggard. But when she saw William, tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. She rushed forward and hugged William excitedly. "William, you're finally back. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you at home? You bad guy, I'm pregnant. The baby is already 3 months old. You're going to be a father." William's expression instantly darkened. His eyes looked at me uneasily, while his hand subconsciously pushed Emma away with force. With a bang, Ma's body hit the doorframe and then fell heavily. Ma's face turned deathly pale in an instant. Her hand was placed on her slightly protruding abdomen, and the pain distorted her expression. Fine beads of blood seeped out from under her body. Bright red and striking. She sobbed uncontrollably and stretched out her hand towards William feebly. "William, quickly save the baby in my belly." But William took a step back. The expression on his face froze, and his tone was icy cold as he blurted out, "This child shouldn't have existed in the first place." He turned to look at me. "Olivia, don't listen to her nonsense." I couldn't stand it anymore. I interrupted him, "Is this the time to say these things? Hurry up and send her to the hospital." The night was thrown into chaos. Under the incandescent light of the hospital, Mimu's face was so pale that there was not a trace of blood. She lost the baby in her belly and also damaged her body. It will be much more difficult for her to get pregnant in the future compared to ordinary people. Even if she gets pregnant, there's a high probability that she won't be able to keep the baby. After a while, Emma stirred. She lifted her empty eyes and stared fixedly at me. "It's you. It's all your fault. You made me lose the baby. It's all your fault." She struggled to lunge at me from the bed. I quickly took a few steps back. William immediately stepped in front of me to protect me. He shouted angrily, "Emma, have you had enough?" Tears streamed down Emma's face in an instant. She stared at William with wide open eyes, almost splitting her eyes in anger. "William, she made us lose the baby. I may never be able to get pregnant again. How can you take her side?" I pushed William aside and coldly reminded, "Miss Emma, don't make unfounded accusations. There are surveillance cameras at the entrance of the villa which record everything clearly. If you hit your head and lost your mind, go back and watch the surveillance carefully." Emma's throat choked. "You," I warned, "if you try to shift the blame again, I'll have to consider you're trying to blackmail me. I'll report it to the police station. If you keep pestering, I can sue you." Emma's eyes turned red with anger. William rubbed his temples and said indiferently, "The baby is gone and it's gone. You shouldn't have gotten pregnant in the first place. You're reaping what you've sown." Emma's breath hitched. Hatred welled up in her empty eyes. "William, I deliberately poked holes in the condom, but if you could control yourself you wouldn't have ended up in bed with me." She turned her gaze to me, a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. "Do you know when it was?" "It was during the month when you were preparing for the wedding." He had already cheated. "Otherwise, how do you think the baby in my belly came about?" William was furious. "Shut up." He hastily explained to me, "Olivia, don't believe her. Listen to me. The baby in her belly has nothing to do with me. I don't know whose it is. She's trying to pin the blame on me." I interrupted him, "I don't need your explanation." At this moment, my face was calm as if I was watching a farce that had nothing to do with me. I said lightly, "William, I don't care. Our deal is over. From now on, don't pester me anymore." I turned and left. William wanted to follow, but Emma threw herself at him and knocked him to the ground. I didn't look back. Behind me were Emma's hate-filled wails. "William, are you even human? I hate you. You'll die a horrible death." William disappeared from my world. I opened a branch company in another city, bought a house and settled down in that city. Occasionally, when stroking the soft fur of the cat in my arms, I would inadvertently think of William. His life wasn't going well now. The company's economy was declining, and the shareholders had a lot of complaints about him. He was swamped with work. What troubled him the most was that Emma was pestering him. After being discharged from the hospital, Emma's mental state was a bit abnormal. She followed William around all day, muttering to herself. She repeated over and over again, "William, how can you like other women? It's just a breakup. It's not the first time you've broken up with me. You'll come back to me after a while." She sobbed. "But, William, I've been waiting for you for so long. Why haven't you come back to me yet?" William was annoyed to death by her. He had hit her, scolded her, and driven her away, but Emma always managed to pester him again. As time went by, William became more and more irritable. He lost control of his emotions and almost beat Emma to death in public. Since Emma had a mental illness, she was exempt from liability. He was detained in the detention center. The video of him beating someone spread on the internet. Netizens criticized him harshly, and everyone seemed to be against him. Under the cyber violence, the fact that he had stalked and harassed me was dug up. He angered the public again. Under the public opinion, the company's shares kept dropping. When he returned to the company, he would face the shareholders' accountability. But now William was in a difficult situation. He had beaten Emma into the ICU. Most relatives held him accountable and sued him in court. Now William had only two choices. Either lose the lawsuit and end up in prison, or take care of Emma for the rest of his life, under the surveillance of the Zhu family. This matter made a big stir on the internet for a month. When the public opinion died down, William and Emma secretly got married. He married Emma, whom he had looked down upon. And for the rest of his life, he would have to take good care of Emma, whose mental state was sometimes normal and sometimes crazy, under the supervision of Emma's family. He will be haunted by Emma for the rest of his life. I never thought I would meet William again. It was just a coincidence. When he caught sight of me, his eyes were filled with complex emotions. After a long while, he called out to me, "Olivia, are you doing well now?" I glanced at William. Obviously, he wasn't doing well at all. He had grown white hair, there were more wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, and his face carried a sense of gloomy depression. I heard that he still holds shares in the company, but has no real power. For a man in the prime of his career development, this is a huge blow. I raised my eyebrows and ignored him. Before I got into the car, his eyes were still fixed on me, reluctant to move away. I turned my head back. He was at a distance where he could clearly hear my voice. I said infuriately, "My amnesia was faked. And I also know that yours was faked. We're quits." William's pupils suddenly dilated. He wanted to rush over and question me, but was held up by Emma, who appeared out of nowhere. Without hesitation, I got into the car and drove off, leaving him nothing but the exhaust fumes. When I was with William, I found out that he had an ex-girlfriend with whom he had an on-off relationship for 5 years. It would be a lie to say I didn't mind. He repeatedly assured me that he would have no contact with Emma at all. But during the month when I was meticulously planning our wedding, he had an encounter with Emma again. On the morning after we got the marriage certificate, I left in a hurry due to work. When I came back earlier, I heard unbearable sounds coming from the bedroom. It was William and Emma. It was like a bolt from the blue. I didn't even have the strength to push the door open. I didn't expose them. I left William a bit of dignity. Cheating is my bottom line. I couldn't tolerate it. But for a moment, I couldn't bring myself to speak. However, William became greedy. I overheard him making a phone call to his buddy. He said casually, "I regret it. I don't want to be tied down by marriage at such a young age. Besides, she doesn't seem to love me as much as Emma does. Mama would do anything for me. She's different. She's too calm. A bit boring. I want to be apart from her for a while. When I figure things out, I'll go back to her." Amnesia? If I pretend to have amnesia, will she lose control for me? I want to see how far she'll go for me.